For hundreds of years, we've completely misunderstood the evil queen's mirror.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when she stood in that dark zone and asked who is the fairest of them all, she wasn't actually asking who is the prettiest. She was asking who is the most uncompromisingly honest. And today, we're going to explore why the answer to that question is completely terrifying.
It really is. I mean, it fundamentally rewrites our entire cultural memory of that story. We hear the word Fairest and automatically project our, modern obsession with aesthetics onto it. It just becomes a vanity metric.
Right.
Huh.
I always just thought of fair as a synonym for beauty.
Most people do. But historically, the word fair carries this entirely different weight. It means just. It means equitable. It means uncorrupted.
Uncorrupted. Looking at the sources we've gathered today, specifically this fascinating piece called The Most Honest of Them All, it seems like the most beautiful thing a person can be isn't visually pleasing at all, but deeply radically honest.
Yeah, and we aren't talking about the simple surface-level idea of just not lying.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive, and for you listening right now, is to explore the profound psychological costs and the ultimate gifts of embodying that uncorrupted truth. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the mirror in the story has no agenda,
Right, it doesn't sugarcoat anything.
but it also doesn't possess any malice. It simply reflects what is. Yet the queen experiences that objective reflection as this targeted, vicious attack.
Well, this is the foundational paradox we're working with today.
Hmm.
Uncorrupted truth is not inherently cruel, but it is experienced as cruelty by a mind that is fundamentally unready to perceive it.
Wow.
And frankly, we've all operated as a queen at some point. I mean,
Yeah.
think about those moments when you've gone to a friend or a partner, deeply insecure, asking a question, but actually just begging to be told that you are still the center of the universe.
Oh, for sure, that your choices were justified.
Exactly. We constantly seek out flattery disguised as feedback. True honesty does not flatter. It just reflects.
We seek flattery, not fairness. That is a heavy realization. It implies that if the mirror represents this pure, uncorrupted truth, we can't really understand it until we confront what corrupted truth looks like in our own lives.
Which is usually not what we think it is.
Yeah, going through these notes, the most surprising takeaway is that dishonesty isn't usually a bold, active lie. We picture a fabricated story or a massive deception, but the reality is just much quieter.
The bold lies are easy to spot and categorize. The real danger, psychologically speaking, is the slow accumulation of passive dishonesty. We have to drastically widen our definition of what it actually means to be dishonest.
Right.
Our sources break this down into incredibly common everyday behaviors. Take omission, for example.
Right, leaving out the one crucial piece of context that fundamentally changes how another person understands a situation.
Exactly. Even while technically telling the truth about everything else.
Or what our research highlights as the performance. This one feels incredibly relevant. It's the act of assembling a specific version of yourself purely for the approval of the room you're in, rather than presenting what is actually true.
Along with deflection.
Yeah.
Answering a completely different question than the one you were asked just to escape the heat of the moment.
Oh, I've definitely done that.
Or the softening of reality, where you edit your feelings down to make them palatable, to the point where you actually imply the opposite of what you deeply believe.
And perhaps the most insidious form, the silence where words were required. Failing to speak when letting someone operate under a false assumption serves your immediate comfort.
Yeah, silence can be a huge lie.
I'm struggling with this a little bit, though. If I tell my mother-in-law her cooking is terrible, or if I'm in a corporate meeting and I decide not to voice every single dissenting, critical thought popping into my head, am I being fundamentally dishonest? Or am I just reading the room and being polite?
It's a fair question.
Because it feels like we're equating basic social grace with deception.
Well, it's a crucial distinction to make. What we are examining isn't the suppression of every fleeting, intrusive thought. It's a sustained pattern of withholding.
Okay.
If you consistently use reading the room as a sophisticated shield to hide your actual boundaries, your core beliefs, or your authentic self, that is where the damage begins.
So it's not a burglar violently breaking down the door of your integrity. It's a slow, invisible gas leak.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The gas leak doesn't announce itself, but eventually the environment becomes toxic. Because the ultimate consequence of this habitual passive dishonesty isn't just a loss of social trust.
It's internal.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a catastrophic internal failure.
Yeah.
The psychological literature we're pulling from calls this state estranged interiority.
Estranged interiority. Having to figure out what your actual face looks like because you've been wearing a mask for so long, how does that actually happen on a mechanical level?
It comes down to cognitive load and neuroplasticity.
Right.
When you constantly perform a version of yourself, softening your true reactions, laughing at things you don't find funny,
Agreeing with the consensus to avoid friction.
right, you are actively wiring your brain to default to that performance.
Yeah.
Your brain reinforces those neural pathways while simultaneously pruning the pathways of your authentic reactions.
Wow.
If you withhold your truth long enough, the performance eventually becomes the only self you can easily locate. Literally, the real you becomes biologically harder to access.
The terrifying cost of passive dishonesty is that you lose trust in your own internal signals. You essentially curate yourself out of existence.
Exactly.
But wait, if shedding our performance leaves us completely exposed to judgment, how do we physically tolerate that anxiety without retreating? Because doing the opposite of hiding means stepping entirely out into the open.
It requires developing what the literature described as the capacity to be seen. And we have to be incredibly precise about what being seen actually means in today's culture.
Right, because my immediate thought goes to the internet. We have an entire culture built around oversharing.
Oh, totally.
We've all seen that person on LinkedIn who posts a curated, teary-eyed selfie about a massive business failure, but the whole post is carefully engineered to highlight their incredible resilience and leadership skills.
What's fascinating here is that we often confuse that kind of display with true vulnerability. But radical vulnerability as a performance is just another mask. It's PR.
So it's oversharing, specifically deployed as a mechanism to control the narrative and harvest validation.
Exactly. True honesty, by contrast, is the quiet, unglamorous willingness to be known. It's the willingness to say what you actually mean, to stand firmly behind your thoughts, and to let your internal state and your external words be made of the exact same material. Zero hidden agenda.
I'm putting myself in that scenario and my nervous system is screaming. The idea of offering zero spin, zero self-preservation, it's terrifying.
It should be terrifying. The reason our nervous systems react that way is because true honesty tethers us instantly to accountability. Think about the physiological safety of ambiguity. If you speak clearly without softening or deflecting, you systematically dismantle your own escape hatches.
Yeah.
You can't fall back on, oh, you totally misunderstood me, or I didn't mean it like that, if you said exactly what you meant.
Honesty anchors you to reality.
It's incredibly stabilizing, but it leaves you entirely exposed to the consequences of your own words.
Think about your own conversations this past week. How often do you rely on strategic vagueness just to keep the peace?
We all do it.
Like if a friend asks if you want to go to an event you dread, do you say, maybe, let me check my calendar, instead of just admitting it's not your thing? We preserve our optionality to avoid social friction, but we are paying for it with our own integrity.
We use it as a survival tactic. But this forces us to recognize a difficult truth. Stepping into the open and shattering that comfortable ambiguity will inevitably disrupt the comfort of the people around us.
Which introduces the second major requirement of living an uncorrupted life, the willingness to disappoint. This was the most challenging part of the research for me. The idea that deeply honest people disappoint others continually. Not out of malice, not because they are trying to be difficult, but simply because the truth is rarely convenient.
We harbor this illusion that if we are just kind enough, accommodating enough, and good enough, everyone will be happy with us.
Right.
But the psychological reality is that any relationship that cannot tolerate honest input is a relationship held together entirely by mutual performance. The honest person, just by existing and refusing to play along, exposes the fragility of those bonds.
Wow.
When you bring clarity into a room that is accustomed to comfortable vagueness, that clarity lands as a confrontation.
Okay, I have to push back here because I know people who would hear this and say, great, I have a philosophical license to tell everyone exactly what I think of them.
The brutally honest types.
Exactly. I'm thinking of that person who says, I'm just brutally honest, and usually they are far more interested in the brutality than the honesty. Where is the line between deep, uncorrupted honesty and just weaponized bluntness? Does this mean we just get a free pass to be blunt and offensive?
The sources anticipate this exact misinterpretation. Being willing to disappoint someone is absolutely not the same thing as desiring to disappoint them. Bluntness that hides aggression is still a form of corruption. It's using truth as a club to inflict pain.
Right, that makes sense.
The standard we are looking at requires a strict rule of delivery, timing and care without compromise.
One of the standout concepts in the reading frames it perfectly. It says that honesty without compassion is force, but compassion without honesty is erasure.
Let's break down the mechanics of those two extremes. If you wield a hard truth merely to overwhelm or hurt someone, you are using force. You aren't being a mirror, you're being a weapon. On the flip side, if you use compassion as an excuse to perpetually avoid difficult conversations, you are engaging in erasure. You are participating in a shared delusion. True fairness requires a dual capacity in the brain. You must hold a deep care for the objective truth, while simultaneously holding a deep care for the human being receiving it.
So you evaluate their emotional capacity in that moment. You consider the timing.
Exactly.
But what you don't do is use your care for them as a rationalization for your own cowardice. Because if we are really honest, managing someone else's reality by lying to them is actually incredibly condescending. You are essentially treating an adult like they are too fragile to handle the real world.
It is a form of soft arrogance.
Yeah.
You're deciding what they can and cannot handle. But here is the critical bottleneck. You cannot deliver this careful, compassionate, deeply grounded honesty to the outside world if your own internal sensors are skewed.
It's like trying to calibrate a high-precision scale while you're resting your hand on it. You can't offer an objective truth to anyone else if your own baseline is skewed by denial. And this brings us to the internal foundation required to pull any of this off: self-honesty.
Before you can act as a mirror for the world, you must subject yourself to the reflection. And this is undeniably the hardest work a human being can do. It requires sitting quietly with the grief you are carrying while insisting to everyone around you that you are totally fine.
Yeah.
It requires interrogating the motivations beneath your stated motivations, admitting what you actually want out of your life, not what is convenient for your family or your social circle to want for you.
Wiping away your own delusions. Practicing not lying to yourself about what is real, and then developing enough internal steadiness to just hold whatever you find there without flinching.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific internal steadiness is what philosophers refer to as equanimity. When you begin living this way, aligning your internal truth with your external actions, the world is going to apply massive pressure.
People will try to gaslight you into revising your reality. They will say, "Are you sure it was that bad?" Or, "Can you just let it go?"
Right. Equanimity is the psychological capacity to absorb that immense pressure without collapsing or retreating into a mask.
It's not about being rigid or being stubborn just for the sake of it.
No, it's about rootedness. It is the ability to remain recognizably yourself, even when your environment is actively working to reshape you into something more convenient.
Yeah.
And this loops us beautifully back to the fairy tale.
The true fairness of Snow White wasn't her physical symmetry.
No, her profound beauty was her unbroken nature, her capacity to remain uncorrupted and true to herself despite every attempt by the queen to distort her, possess her, or eliminate her.
She was fair because she was unbroken by the world's distortion. I love that reframe.
It's a great lens.
But doing all this hard work, wiping away the internal fog, holding your ground against pressure, delivering truth with agonizing care, it comes with a very heavy social tax. So why do it?
Okay.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The ultimate reward for this exhausting process is a psychological state called coherence.
Coherence is the ultimate gift buried inside the heavy cost of honesty. I want you to imagine the physiological state of your nervous system, when what you say, what you feel, what you do, and what you deeply believe all perfectly match.
Wow.
You cease to be a fragmented collection of performances and become a singular, unified entity.
The sheer energy savings alone would be life-changing. Think about how many mental cycles we burn every single day, managing the gap between the self we present at work, the self we present to our families, and the self we actually are when we are alone in the dark.
Keeping those stories straight is exhausting.
Totally.
It drains our cognitive reserves. But the coherent person doesn't pay that daily tax. There is no creeping anxiety of exposure because there is nothing hidden that they are terrified someone will uncover.
Now, we must clarify, this doesn't mean the coherent person has no privacy. Honest people have deep boundaries. They keep many things private.
Right.
The difference is that what they do choose to share is entirely authentic, not a managed synthetic performance. So privacy is a choice. Dishonesty is a management strategy.
That's beautifully said.
And other people can instinctively feel this coherence, can't they? Even if they can't articulate what they are picking up on. You naturally relax your own nervous system around someone who isn't performing. Their yes actually means yes. Their silence isn't a passive-aggressive trap. Their agreement isn't just appeasement to get you to stop talking.
We instinctively gravitate toward that solidity. It feels safe. But we must synthesize this beautiful idea of coherence with the darker reality our sources present. Because while coherence is incredibly magnetic, it is frequently accompanied by the profound loneliness of honesty.
The honest person is the one you trust with your life, but maybe not the one you invite to the casual dinner party.
Right.
They are sought out during a crisis because they are solid ground, but their presence in casual settings can make things a little too real for people who just want to perform.
Think of the dynamic between the evil queen and the mirror. She needed the mirror. She relied on its objectivity entirely to orient herself, but she could not tolerate being in the same room with it for very long.
It was necessary but excruciating to sit with.
And the sources suggest that this is often the exact position of the deeply honest person in society. Deeply needed, deeply respected, but kept at a comfortable distance. Because deep fairness disrupts our comfortable illusions.
So, if you commit to this, do you just have to accept being lonely and shattered against the wall? If you commit to wiping away the fog and being the fairest in this deep psychological sense, do you just resign yourself to being the mirror, knowing the queen is eventually going to throw a goblet at you?
It can certainly feel that way in the short term, but the psychological framework offers a beautifully empowering counter-narrative.
Hmm.
The mirror possesses a power that the frantic, desperate queen fundamentally lacks.
What's that?
The mirror is not diminished by her rejection. If she screams at it, if she attempts to destroy it, the truth it reflected does not alter. It remains completely itself.
Oh, wow.
And that specific stability, the unshakable quality of a person who simply tells the truth and is not biologically altered by how that truth is received by an angry world, that is the ultimate form of power.
The coherent person doesn't need the world to validate what they see. They just need to keep their own eyes open.
Their reality does not require consensus to exist.
That is incredibly freeing. So let's bring this all together for you listening. Let's look at the final tally. What does it actually cost in full to become this kind of coherent, uncorrupted person?
That's a lot.
Based on everything we've unpacked, you have to surrender a lot of really warm, comfortable things. You have to give up the drug of always being agreed with. You have to abandon the safety of strategic vagueness.
You lose the convenient escape hatch of saying, oh, I didn't realize how I really felt.
And you have to entirely drop the ease of just performing for whatever audience happens to be in front of you.
It is a heavy, relentless toll. It asks you to develop a relationship with the objective truth that is more primary and more essential than your relationship with external approval. It asks you to hold your internal reality with such deep conviction that someone else's negative reaction doesn't automatically become evidence that you did something wrong.
But the ultimate trade-off makes it worth it. In return for giving up all those superficial comforts, you get something priceless. You become someone who actually exists fully. You stop the slow, invisible gas leak that is eroding the self you built entirely for the gaze of others.
Right.
You achieve that rare, beautiful coherence where your face and your words are made of the exact same material.
This raises an important question to close on, extending the metaphor we've been unpacking today. We've spent this entire time dissecting the internal fortitude and the profound courage it takes to be the uncorrupted mirror for the world, to stand firm in your coherence.
Yeah.
But the ultimate test of that coherence might actually be found in the company you actively choose to keep. Ask yourself, have you built a life surrounded by evil queens who will attempt to shatter you the moment you reflect a truth they don't want to hear? Or are you brave enough to invite other unflinching, honest mirrors into your own inner circle, even when you aren't quite ready for the reality they have to show you?
What a powerful place to leave it. You can't just be the mirror. You have to be willing to stand in front of one, too. Thank you for taking this journey into the sources with us today. Take a look at the mirrors in your own life. Keep wiping the fog off the glass, and we will see you on the next deep dive.